The computer was the bicycle for the mind in terms of like AI is the motorcycle.
You made it feel okay to make money.
I still think WordPress is, WordPress is the way to go.
You'd essentially be able to build a team within your WordPress ecosystem to accelerate your work and to actually help you bring on even more clients and make more money. Welcome to Impressive Hosting, a podcast about the role hosting plays in shaping the open web. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman. On this show, we go deeper than uptime and dashboards. We talk about hosting as infrastructure, about ownership, independence, and what it takes to build ethical, high-end WordPress hosting that actually serves creators, businesses, and the internet itself. Before we dive in, head to impressive.host. That's where you can comment on episodes, ask follow-up questions, and help shape future conversations. You also find links to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen. I am so happy to be presenting an interview with Jake Goldman, and a friend and someone who's been a prolific, super important element in the WordPress hosting and agency space for more than a decade. And he's the first guest that we have on season 2 of this show. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you're working on, what's going on with you.
Sure, I'm delighted, and it does feel special. It's like I don't know how we've avoided being on a podcast together before. I think, Jesse, you and I have been working together since 2010, 2011. It's a little frightening to think that was over 15 years ago now. An honor to be your second season first guest. So I like to say I've been developing on a web since there's been a web to develop on, going back to the 90s, doing things for like high school clubs and college projects. I then went into the I guess we call it the contracting or the consulting or the agency spaces, which is to say most of my career actually been going back to that late 90s, little freelance projects here and there. I've been in the services business, helping people build the best solutions on whatever the best technology is for making experiences on the web, making experiences with modern connected technology. And then in 2011, back when I was living here in your neck of the woods, in Providence, Rhode Island area, I started a company called 10up. I thought at the time that I started the business that WordPress was really going places. I had sort of in my previous role, helping diversify into other CMSs and platforms, gotten a chance to travel around and go to different WordCamps, saw so much energy bubbling up in this community, so much talent that was just freelancing, doing a project here and there, would have loved to, really dedicate their more focus to building professional sites, but just didn't have yet the sort of the economics or the enough intake for business or enough demand to turn into a full-time job. So incredible talent potential on one side, and the other side working from the earliest days with what's called the WordPress VIP program now, really starting to see some larger businesses, enterprises at that time, particularly in media, get really more interested in WordPress, and even small and medium business I was working with at that time. That was just it was a level ahead in terms of both the effort that it would take to produce a really high quality site, but maybe more uniquely, the joy that somebody actually having to edit and maintain, manage that website would experience compared to so many of the other platforms at the time, not to mention how many sites were still just doing it all custom every time that there was a request. So I started 10up believing at that time that there was a real space for an agency to come in, to really cement themselves early as a leader in the space, as a contributor to the project, as a thought leader, how to create great editorial experiences and admin experiences, and serving the enterprises in that space. Been inspired by companies like Red Hat and Linux, or at that time, Lullabot in the Drupal world, agencies that had really come to be associated, or technology companies that would come to be associated with more open technologies as a leading provider. And that's the model I want to build with 10up. And, thought I was going to be taking a break for a year from payroll, but they ended up year 1. We had 7 or 8 employees, and history continued on from there. Built that company to about 300 people. I would say very centered in WordPress as our preferred platform, but starting to work with other technologies, starting to work with things that were completely CMS agnostic in design and user experience design thinking and all the rest. And then in 2023, I made the decision to merge the business into a company called Fueled, which was I would say what 10up was to WordPress is probably what Fueled was to mobile apps and well-funded startups and app experiences. So it was a great combination of really strong product design thinking, app development on their side, strong CMS, web on our side, with some overlap. And that was a couple of years ago. So after running 10up and building it for a good 12 and a half years before integrating into Fueled, I helped for the next year and a half with some of that, really figured out how do we get the company to act as one, combined together as one at a wild time when AI was flying onto the scene. And there was, I would say, a major shift from overheated to probably underheated in the economy and the market of web and digital. So that was a wild year and a half. And then at the beginning of 2025, I sort of stepped back into a role that we call partner. I'm not sure that we've quite found the right title for it, but effectively I work in a part-time by my standards, in the business, really focusing on, regularly talking to the executive team, the CEO, a lot of advising, strategic support, some special projects, or unique development opportunities that I can sink my teeth into, and actually doing a lot of work in storytelling and content marketing for the company, and still doing a fair amount of networking and getting to chat with people like you still. So, like, that was long-winded.
Wow.
That gives a
Yeah, that's great. No, I mean, it's so fantastic because, you and I have known each other for a long time, and it's awesome to hear from your perspective, like all the things that you've been working on. And in fact, you just, you went through all that, and I realized that like 2 seconds into it that I hadn't actually said for the guests at home what your title is, what you're working on. We had just said that you're a partner and an advisor at Fueled, and I failed to say that. And I think that's because of the fact that, like, in my head, everyone knows who Jake is, right? Like, it's just, you're one of those guys that's so well known within the industry. I'm so glad you dove into your past a little bit there, and you gave us a little bit of a preview of what you're working on. I think it's funny.
Probably some people in your audience have different titles in their head that come to mind when they think of me. But yes, fair to say in this community that we sit inside of.
Yeah. So, I mean, you founded 10up, obviously. Are you still working with 10up at all in any way, in any capacity?
Yeah, that's that partner role. So 10up, the brand today, is we call it the name of our WordPress practice. So the combined brand, and I probably should have been clear about that as well. The combined brand ended up post merger, about a year in, we rallied around settling on the name Fueled as the combined company brand. One of the big reasons we did that was because, as much as we love WordPress, it's still our primary CMS, the one that we do the most work with. If there was a larger vision to expand out and be a bigger business, work with more technologies, work with more solutions, I think the flip side of being so positively associated with WordPress is it almost sometimes felt, I know my marketing team hates when I say this, but it almost sometimes felt typecasted, where it was, even for current customers, hard to have a conversation where it says, 10up, the WordPress agency. Oh yeah, the WordPress people. Right. And which sometimes it's hard to really break through and say, well, no, we want to work with other parts of your organization. There's other things we do. So keeping that 10up name associated with WordPress by sort of branding it as like the part of the business that's focused on WordPress solutioning and R&D as a practice people can still find. But I think the pivot to the Fuel name makes it much more clear that what this larger business.
I think you did a great job there, because I kind of saw it as more of an offshoot rather than like an umbrella over it. So that's a good bit of clarity there. Okay, so that's great. When you're working on Fueled, and you said that it's a little bit more like 10up was to WordPress, Fueled is to apps. Are you building these apps on WordPress a little bit, all the time, never? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so I would say the funny thing about a rebrand where you sort of go with one of the previous company's names and you merge is that the vocabulary becomes a little hard. I think today we think of as Fueled as a company that has general digital excellence with a concentration in both mobile product design and digital product design, and in CMS and content solutions, platforms like WordPress and the things that attach onto it like WooCommerce. So the company today is really about both of those heritages for both businesses.
Right.
Where the company builds apps, it's interesting because WordPress is almost like 10up was almost so integrator-like in being very focused on specific technologies and platforms. Where Fueled traditionally was, and its legacy was, much more agnostic in terms of what was right for the project, what was right for the client. Not agnostic in the sense they're building iOS and Android apps, but what the technology was the layer below that. So this company did everything from for those more familiar with vocabulary in the mobile space, everything from like Java to Objective-C, when that was the platform for iOS. They've done Swift applications. On the web technologies front, there's platforms like frameworks like Flutter or React Native. So those it's really all over the map in terms of the technologies that they've worked with under the hood. Many of those projects, especially ones we've done the last couple of years since integrating together, use WordPress as a content store, use it as the sort of back end of the CMS where the content and data and information is stored very frequently. In fact, I think we have a blog post. Actually, I think it went out last week, so I can talk about it, about Good Housekeeping. We just did like a recipes app for the famous UK magazine brand under Condé. As a project, they are on WordPress over in the UK, part of Condé. And we, I'm sorry, Hearst, not Condé. Correction on that one. The Hearst project with Good Housekeeping. And, it was a great example that we have on the site now of like, we just put up a blog post and a case study about it that really shows off like how our experience with WordPress, with CMSs, with knowing how to organize and structure that content and pull it out of a CMS combines with like the product design thinking and like the very native mobile application kind of experience that what we think of as traditionally pre-merger Fuel was. So it's a good example of, sometimes we are using WordPress. We don't really use it as like WordPress isn't I wouldn't say we build the apps with WordPress. It's not a framework for how you build mobile applications. There are some cases and some tools out there where there's, that can make sense. But the reality is, I think where WordPress plays well, it has a lot to offer in the mobile and application experience space is the content store, right? And the back end API that is called out to for content and information and data. It's not the like native front end, locally run experience on the application.
And do you think that the WordPress CMS still provides a pretty good experience for your client to go in and make those changes to the content themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. We generalize a little bit at our hazard, right? Different customers have different problems. For some customers, not every single customer, WordPress does not make sense for every single customer. There are some customers that are doing things that have to do with like menu displays in we did a lot of work like Six Flags where you're dealing with like menus in the park and everything that need a much more structured kind of CMS. It's a little bit more or less about like publishing and editorial experience, a little bit more about like highly structured data types. But for all customers that are just trying to get content pushed out on the web, layout pages, have articles, have things like recipes for that recipe app, I still think WordPress is WordPress is the way to go.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think we agree on that one for sure. So first season of this podcast, we talked about the core tenets of managed WordPress hosting. I'm curious what you think that should mean to your clients. If you tell them you're going to be putting their website on, a hosting product that offers managed WordPress hosting. If you were not to dive in any deeper than that, what would you hope they are taking away from that definition?
The definition of what they're looking for in managed.
Like, what is managed WordPress hosting? What do you want them to think that means? What do you think is the general population should assume you're getting when you're buying managed hosting?
I think the expectation that I should always caution in these conversations, I can speak a little bit to the whole like entire universe, but our focus is largely like on the enterprise and the larger buyers. Not everything's
sure. Yeah. It's a good perspective though to look at it through that lens,
Yeah, for sure. But I also just feel like I need to qualify a little because I think it might be different for like a small or medium business. I think at the enterprise level, what their expectation is that they have trust that there's specialization in how to make this platform work well, that they don't have to worry that WordPress 7.0 is going to come out. There's going to be a preferred PHP and they have to start getting technical about it. Is my low-level metal generic host even paying attention to what requirements are changing in WordPress? It connotes a focus. It's kind of like, you take any industry, right? If I'm working with a law firm, when I'm dealing with employment matters and difficulty, I want to work with an employment firm. So I know that they understand specifically the challenges that are unique to that space. They're prepared to deal with things that might be cutting edge or changing. I really believe in the power of focus. Back in the day, focused on WordPress as a platform on V1. So I think it's the same thing for our clients. They don't want to have to worry about low-level sort of configuration, the underlying Apache or Nginx or Mongo or MySQL. They don't want to worry about that. They want to know that they can trust that through specialization, if there's one thing that that platform does, that managing that managed hosting platform does is worry about making sure it works really well with WordPress. It's optimized for WordPress. It's not going to break when new versions come out. That if there is a problem with how their site is running on WordPress, if they have specialization on packing those problems and diagnosing those problems. So it's the trust that comes with specialization and expertise.
That's a great way to put it. And you know what's funny is that the way you framed it, I could literally just put like, and this is going to be a little bit of a shameless plug, but I could literally just put like description of WP Cloud, because it's not just the things that we're working on. It's not just about the way in which we're describing it to the end customer, but to the hosting companies that we're working with. It is an opportunity for them to actually offload some of the work that you just described in managing WordPress updates, knowing what's happening in core, what's coming in the future, managing updates, rolling back problems if they exist. These are all things that we're taking off the shoulders of our hosting partners and putting back onto WP Cloud. So it's an interesting parallel there. I love that you brought that up, or rather that you answered in that way. Awesome. So you mentioned 7.0. Are you excited for real-time collaboration? Is that something that your clients need, they want?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a bunch of customers on WordPress VIP in the enterprise space, so some of them have been able to experiment with the early access into that. It's in some ways it feels hard to understate how significant of a shift and a unleashing of new workflows. I mean, anybody I think that works in a newsroom with multiple people, or frankly, even just our small 2-3 person content team at Fueled, if I never have to DM somebody on Slack again to say, hey, did you finish that change? Can I take over? Right.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody else.
Right.
I have to see the takeover screen again. I'll be delighted. It really is a powerful shift in being able to collaborate asynchronously. I think I'm a little bit braced, maybe having some of the earlier experiments. I love that we're taking risks. I don't want to say breaking things, but taking some bigger risks. Platforms, I do think there's some work that agencies like us will have to do to make sure it works well with all of these customized implementations, and there's some education that's going to have to come with that. But I mean, we need to keep these changes pushed forward. I also think, and we've written about this on some of our recent content, looking at trends for next year. We have a white paper we're publishing that gets into this a little bit in the media and editorial space and collaborative editing. I think that should be published in like a week and a half or so. It's not just important because I think it sort of modernizes WordPress to be more like what people have come to expect from the Figmas and Google Docs of the world, to really unleash like human to human collaboration. But there's another interesting angle here, I think, it's a little bit cerebral, which is like, I think as AI becomes more prominent in things like laying out content, doing first drafts of content, it being more integrated with human beings into the editorial process, I actually think these kind of collaboration tools are more and more the most critical features that will differentiate content management systems like WordPress. If you don't mind my rambling, I'll tell you a little bit more about why. I think there's two big reasons. One is, I think AI is going to increasingly, to the extent that it hasn't already among early adopters like us and technologists like us already there, it's increasingly always the first draft, right? So the power of the CMS in a world where AI goes in, it's like, okay, you gave me some information, you prompted me, here's my first cut. The power of the CMS, I think, is less and less going to be about like, I want you to go in and write and lay out my content the first time. You're probably at some point going to tell some bot or agentic thing, like, here's what I want to write about, here's my inputs, ask me some questions, look at my other pages and take a stab at laying out this new product description. So like how good the tools are to do your first cut at laying out your first cut at laying things out quickly becomes less and less important with time. What becomes more and more important is when you get that first cut, how easy it is for people and teams to go in and quickly clean that up and refine it and polish it. And with high velocity in this era, get it out the door quickly. So like, I think I'll be spending less time in my CMS doing things in the future, like, let me add this block, I think this picture will look nice, doing all of that the first time, and more time going in and cleaning up and refining. That's with other humans on my team, like sending an engineer in to read some technical copy or something like that, but I'm going to send them to some Google Doc. But I also think, and there should be a lot of collaboration in the CMS with AI, right? So I picture these notes and the collaboration going. What's to me a little bit even more interesting than now with my editorial team, we can work on, hey, how does this look? How does that look? Like you can do a doc or a slideshow. That's cool. And that's important. That's an important differentiation. But I'm also imagining the world where there's an agent that comes in And I'm like,
Sure.
hey, can you try moving this thing down there or try inserting a different picture and it in a real-time mode? The little cursor moving on the screen isn't necessarily another human that I'm working with. It might be an AI that I'm working with that's
I
going
love that.
living alongside me. So this is a very long, or even like in the notes collaboration features that actually Fuel helped shipped in 6.9. Like even that, I'm like, I might be writing back and forth, not just another human, but wanting to put editorial notes and comments going back and forth with an agent, right, or a bot or an experience. So this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, I'm not just excited about collaboration features because it feels like catch-up, it feels like new, it's better human collaboration, it's modernization. I actually think these features may be the most important features to ship to enable this AI future that we're heading toward.
I think that's so smart. Yeah, I mean, the way I was thinking about it as you were talking about it is getting AI involved immediately helps with the blank canvas problem. Something that we all know that a lot of customers experience is that they just don't know where to begin. Now, that could actually be just purely text, right? Just writing alone can be daunting, intimidating, but the actual layout of a page can be incredibly hard too. And having, some kind of agentic service or an agent inside of that editor view, just to get the ball rolling, can be probably so powerful in that you're going to actually produce more content. You're going to get things going faster. Time to live will decrease. Those things will be really, really great. But now what you're talking about is that in this real-time collaborative mode, we would probably have views where it's very similar to Google Docs. You have users who are helping to collaborate on things. You got their avatar, their name, they're leaving comments, they're writing content in real time. But you're right. Like, it would be so cool if you had the ability to have like the Jetpack AI assistant actually act as a user rather than a block as it exists today, where you go and you ask it to do something. It could actually act as a user. And maybe you can even get to the place where you're going to assign it an actual user with role permissions inside of WordPress, give it an avatar, and then that way it's the AI and it's not a human being. You can differentiate a little bit better, but then it can operate within WordPress as if it is a user. That would be quite brilliant.
I think that's maybe not only a more exciting and interesting future in terms of AI integration. I almost feel like it's inevitable. Right. As an experience, like, to be clear, and we have classifying everything else, like there absolutely should be like AI smart tools just embedded that are not like a bot coming in, or like things like what categories are intelligently cropped. This are things that are AI, they're almost lower level AI. But I think it should be almost invisible as this is an AI thing, as opposed to just how the platform works. But when I think about like what it means to have an intelligent person creating, crafting, editing, refining content with me, like we do, like probably everyone does now, and they're like writing an email or a paper or whatever, or a brief or something. What gets me the most excited is to think that I'm pretty far from trusting it to do its own thing, aside from very trivial tasks, but to have a collaborator that comes in that kind of shows up in WordPress more like another human being, but it's an AI, to be able to say, again, to be in the window and be like, okay, I don't really know how to write this next section. Here's what I'm thinking. And then like a synchronous editor today with another human in 7.0, where you see that sort of write the paragraph for you. I can choose whatever AI, it's not whatever is necessarily built into WordPress. I can choose whatever AI bot or agent I want that can come in, connect to it as a user, and then be through MCP and then through collaborative editing, be like, I'm trying the new, say a new Claude agent or something like that, right? Write this paragraph for me, then I tweak a few live collaborative editing, then I change a few things, right, in WordPress, and like reread that again, or can you take a shot at creating an image that expresses this idea? And then I'm like, I don't like that. I'm going to get rid of this. I'll upload this image that I found that I think is better. Like that kind of collaborative process that is leveraging these collaboration features coming into WordPress with things baking in tandem like an MCP, so there's an official way to connect to it, to me is very exciting.
Very, very cool
thing for me. Yes. And that will happen. More interesting, exciting work beside me. I don't have to keep copying from WordPress and be like, I'm going to go back to ChatGPT, paste it in, and be like, I don't really like these paragraphs. Can you select something and strip out the formatting and try to plain text paste it back in WordPress? No, it should just be inside WordPress with me, working on its own.
Well, it changes the idea of what it means to be native within WordPress, because, when we think about plugin development, for example, a lot of times, and we've seen this with the evolution of plugins like Jetpack and others, where you've at times existed in the editor or in the settings screen or in the media library, And that's because it's a much more natural feel. But then, as time went on, we've seen that more and more plugins have built their own dashboard. You kind of visit that as a separate area within the WP admin. I think this is a brilliant way to kind of like rethink the way in which WordPress native kind of would be described. And I think what you're getting to is actually really interesting when you start to think about the fact that these individual agents might have different responsibilities. So if you're on Bluehost Cloud, for example, you might have an agent that's focused on the site editor process. They have a new AI site building tool. So maybe that agent is focused on the actual layout of the page. Whereas maybe you have an SEO agent whose job is only purely to just, when you're done with the content, go in and revise it and add meta descriptions and things like that. You could have a different agent that's focused on the actual content, things that make it a lot more user-friendly, I think, for you to be able to interact with those folks. And then in that real-time collaboration, that becomes the scaffolding, essentially, to be able to interact with all these different agents in different ways across, this, I guess, get back to the idea of WordPress operating as like an operating system on the web. And now you've got this collaborative efforts from different AI agents helping in different ways.
I want to be able to build a team of agents and AIs that are good, to your point, maybe multiple ones that are good at solving different kind of problems. I don't want to necessarily have to wait for WordPress to figure out the plugin ecosystem to figure out exactly which agent that makes callbacks to come back. No, I just want to be like, I'm working with I've hired these 3 or 4 different agents. One's going to work with me on visuals and images. One's going to draft first copies and layouts. One I think is really good at doing final review of copy and refinement. I, as a human being, still want to have creative control and judgment, but I think we're still some ways off from like AI having. But I want to be able to just plug them in and then just like I would hire a person to go in. Your job is to go work on. The way that I see us getting there is not through a plugin that does images in WordPress per se, although that's fine too. It's another good avenue, especially right now. But is ultimately what you need is an interface for them to connect and understand how to use WordPress that is friendly to an AI. That's the MCP stuff that we're developing and the APIs that we're developing. And you need a human interface to be able to collaborate with these AI tools as if they're your collaborators working on content with you. And the key to doing that is these new collaborative tools coming into core.
Yeah.
You put those together. You don't need to build a custom plugin for interface for doing that. You put those two things together and you can work side by side, no different than hiring someone to come in and co-edit something with you and work on a piece of content with you or a layout with you. But again, the simple way of saying it is like, I want those other cursors in the collaborative editing view moving up and down my screen and interacting with me. I want those to be, at least some of them, to be AI agents, not just other people that I've hired to co-edit with me.
That's I'm loving this. This is such a smart way to think about it. And I think that real-time collaboration for me just got even more exciting than I was already with it. There's a really interesting book called Range by David Epstein that talks about how the human mind is still so much better at creative, imaginative strategy than computers are. We had AIs trying to beat chess masters, and then they actually did this thing called centaurs, where the AIs would focus on the tactics, the parts of the brain that humans have, memory, recall, and having the expansive understanding of all these intricate ways in which chess can be played, was handled by AI, but the human was handling strategy. So it was like a hybrid approach where, and it brought chess to a whole new level and was wiping the floor with all these like purely AI tools that were then beating chess masters. And it makes me think, like, for folks at home who are maybe a little bit nervous about AI, who feel like it's going to replace them or replace their job. I mean, I think it would be ignorant to say that like AI is not going to have in a result reduce zero workforce. But I think if you're smart about it, you can get ahead of it and you can be in a place where you're operating as a multiplier effect. You get used to these AIs and they can actually help you to do so much more. And what you're talking about here is that like you'd essentially be able to build a team within your WordPress ecosystem to accelerate your work and to actually help you bring on even more clients and make more money.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I feel like somebody else, I'm sure, has said this before, but to me, it's like if the computer was the bicycle for the mind in terms of like AI is the motorcycle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
in terms of its effect, right? Like at least, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? We live in a wild world now, but like at least right now, like what computers are really good at are pattern matching, and they're really good at vast memory and storage, and they are really good at rapidly doing those two things.
Yeah. Right.
They are
Yep.
not really. I mean, again, look, wild world, words, but they're not really great agents of creativity. Right. There is something ineffable about human creativity. Now, I know we can get into a long philosophical how much of creativity is derivative, and we are all just pattern matchers. We're all just simple LLMs ourselves. But there is something ineffable about human originality. Right. And the truth is, at least as far as I've seen, there's a lack of vocabulary, like a judgment or something, or a common sense almost that human beings still have that AI still quite haven't, an ability to immediately go, no, that's not quite right. Or advanced pattern matching, right? Machines don't have. But there are unquestionably things that are really just about what humans traditionally were also the best at before computers, pattern matching and memory and retrieval, that they are much better at. And so being able to like saying the obvious here, having those two things be able to work together, and bring that back to like the CMS and WordPress, like it's, when I think about like WordPress's ability to continue thriving and succeeding, like I try to think about like, as much as one can today in technology, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, what do we imagine based on current trends the experience is going to be that's going to be the most compelling to people doing digital marketing, right? Or digital content, right, on the web.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to close my eyes and not imagine on the current cycle that we are on that it's the one. If ChatGPT has blown away anything else, as an example, or Gemini or whatever, right, that class of tools for things like the creative crafting and writing or even coding now, right? It's hard for me not to imagine that the CMS that's going to be like the one that blows it away and is ready for the next generation is one that it feels like you're working side by side in partnership and collaboration with these tools. I can't imagine that in like, timescales are so screwed up right now, but like I can't imagine that in 2 years the winning CMS is not one where I can go in with my favorite LLM and Gen AI tool and be like, work with me, right? This page created, or work with me to get this post created in a way that feels very natural to a human, right? And draft the first one for me based on listening to me, and then work with me side by side and making it just like we do with like people do with like Claude Code or whatever the newest one. Right, people are using. Nobody's going, it's not go in, go out, right? It took the go in, go out of like ChatGPT and brought it into one interface to collaborate on coding. That's the CMS in the future. Right. One place where we're going in and working together. You're going to do what you're good at, AI, which is rapidly doing things, refining things, generating things very quickly. I'm going to do what I'm good at, which is like having judgment to say that is terrible and that's not a good idea. Having some creativity to make it feel a little less,
Well, I think it brings back the analogy of like being a conductor in an orchestra, right? Like what's right and wrong, whether to speed up the tempo or not, how to apply that artistic element to all of these things. But at the same time, you need to manage all of these different things happening at a different time, and they don't work well unless they work well together. And so that would be your job in that role. This is such a great conversation, and I hate to end it, but we are at the end of our first episode. We're going to have to break this up into a second part. Before we go, though, I want to say one quick thing. Jake, I wore a suit jacket because you brought suit jackets and that business professional look to WordCamps so long ago. I remember, being at WordCamps wearing jeans and a t-shirt. We're all like, nerdy developers or whatever, and there was Jake Goldman wearing, you didn't wear like a suit, but you wore a suit jacket, and you brought a level of business professionalism, and it changed the way in which we thought about WordPress a little bit. And I think one thing that, you have this long resume, you've done so much work, but I think one thing that I can take away from just having been able to work alongside you in various times and just see how you operate is that you made it feel okay to make money. Like you made it feel like all right, like to like be in WordPress, to provide, a service, to go back and give back to open source, but do it in a way that's, profitable, that helps to grow your business. helps you to hire more people, to expand. Like, and I found it funny when I was thinking about what to wear today, is that like this kind of represents that, you know? So it's a little bit of an homage to you.
You look, all I'll say is you look great. Sports chat.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. We'll be back with another episode with Jake Goldman. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. Do you have a follow-up question for today's guest, thought or comment on anything we talked about, a future guest suggestion, a hosting horror story? What do you think makes great WordPress hosting? All your comments shape this show. Drop them on impressive.host. We also appreciate you following us on social media and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Finally, do check out our list of open source projects that need support at impressive.host. Whether it's code, community, or cache, you can make a difference. See you next time.